was such a joy to meet our guest speaker, Tom, a few months ago through his lovely wife, Paula, and we learned of his company, and the energy was so great when we talked about the potential and how it would inspire you. This talk today is for you. It's for you to think beyond even the walls of where you are now, but what you might be interested, what you might be excited about. And it's not that you have to be in one vein of what we're going to talk about. It's just to get you really creatively thinking about less limits and more, how can you use your talents to bring the Lord glory? So thank you for coming today. If you didn't hear, there's cookies and water over there. And again, I want to thank you so much for being here. And I hope that it excites you and energizes you in your gifts. All right, and here we have Tom.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks. So I'm going to share with you what we do at 209 Group, which is one of the companies that we founded. Almost all of what we're going to go over today is what we refer to as virtual production. So it's technology, mostly around feature films, video games, television, and virtual reality. So I'm going to show you a lot of behind the scenes footage, hopefully of some movies and TV shows that you've seen, and show you what we do to help the artists bring their vision to life. So we have three companies. We have the 209 Group, which is the virtual production company. Novation Productions is a company that we have that literally goes on to the set and shoots these movies with the people that you're going to see here. And then Mocap Solutions is motion capture. So we'll touch on a little bit from all of them. But I want to make it very clear that everyone's taking art, or this is mostly artists, right? We are not creative people at our company. I'm an engineer. Pretty much everyone that works for us has got some sort of technical background. We can hardly draw stick figures without the help of computers. So our job is to really provide tools for the artists. Our dream encounter is an artist that's also even got the slightest bit of technical ability, right? So if you're an artist that can use a computer, a spreadsheet, or 3D software, we are going to get along just fine. And we can help artists like yourselves bring any crazy ideas that you have in your head to the big screen. It's really, that's kind of our job. And so I'll show you how we do that. So what is virtual production? Virtual production is a term that's been around for a long time. It's been a long time coming as the tools have become available, as computers have become more powerful. And this is a TV show right now called The Mandalorian. Are you guys watching The Mandalorian? So we've been working on The Mandalorian. We just wrapped season 3. It is the most well-known virtual production endeavor to date. The tools that they've developed at Industrial Light and Magic to bring this show to the air are pretty unbelievable. We're using them all over the place. And so we were pretty lucky to be involved from the beginning. So I'm going to let John Favreau and some of the others from ILM tell you on this little video what they consider virtual production, what they've done. Then I'll walk you through how it works and what we do. It's super informal here, okay? So if you have a question about anything at any time, feel free, shout out, raise your hand, whatever, and we'll certainly hang around afterwards and answer as many questions as you like. But if you see something that you have a question about where we're going, by all means. Oops.
Part of what's been fun about collaborating on The Mandalorian with Lucasfilm and Disney is that we have been able to see through a few technical innovations and a few firsts that I think are going to have a lot of impact on the way television and movies are made moving forward. In partnership with ILM and Epic, we have put together a system whereby which we can have game engine, real-time render, and video wall technology coming together to create a backdrop for the big, beautiful world of Star Wars.
The volume is 21 feet tall and 75 feet in diameter, run by 7 machines, pumping their visuals onto the screen that's been created in pre-production and can be on the screen within 24 hours of being final.
It's incredibly impressive when you first walk out there because it completely surrounds your peripheral vision. And you really quickly forget that you're indoors and you're not out on some planet's surface. It feels like a real three-dimensional environment surrounding you because it is a three-dimensional environment.
you can allow your key creatives to all make decisions together so that the shots are captured entirely in camera, which allows for a better performance.
And what was so exciting about this is by bringing those people together, things started to click. And we started to realize, well, let's not just do green screen interactive light. If we're going to design the whole set and game engine ahead of time, maybe we could have some in-camera effects.
Everything in the volume is designed to both light the actors and to be a background that we can directly photograph. So you end up with real-time final pixels in camera.
If you look at visual effects heavy films, you've got a film set and then it's going to go to post and it's going to get the world put in. Here we're considering all of that at the same time, and how we create a background and foreground that live together on the volume harmoniously.
When we started to play with the idea of using Unreal Engine for virtual production, that's one of the things that Richard and John started to embrace, is that you've got this very dynamic world where you can have randomization of things and find the happy accident that gives you the perfect shot. Being able to see the actors point at things and see what they're looking at was pretty transformative. It gave everybody context, with the added benefit that if you want to move a mountain from there to there, you could do it instantly.
You could switch between the Iceland location to the desert location, all within the same day of shooting.
The ability to shoot a 10-hour dawn is extraordinary. To shoot any sequence where you say, oh, this wheel's not quite right, let's just move it a little bit. An extraordinary number of benefits and advantages for shooting that environment. It's mind-blowing what that tool is.
What you see is really what you get. And that's something that really means a lot to filmmakers, especially those who have worked with a more traditional approach in the past.
Shots of character in a vehicle traveling through a complex environment. It's always very difficult to do believably on stage. LED screens are a wonderful solution to that problem. Because what you're doing is you're taking this technique of image-based lighting that we've been using in computer graphics for years, but you use it to light a subject.
And then we would do shoots where we would texture map real lit surfaces onto our game engine geo. And so the camera could move anywhere. We would do interiors, like Werner Herzog's office. And then you started doing things like building sets into it, having half a spaceship with reflective surfaces. And so it became exciting because by the end of the season, it was like, let's start designing sets around what this could do well. Just like the good old days.
With Star Wars, we're building up a rich legacy of innovation, and getting to partner with Jon Favreau to make his ambitious vision a reality, it's really a game changer for filmmaking.
Everybody get it? Everyone understand everything that's going on? All right, I'm done. Thanks for coming. So it's important to note that everything you just saw there, every image that you just saw, everything was shot in the same gigantic tin can. Like he said, it's 70 feet across, it's circular, it's 21 feet tall. And this shot that looks like there's mountains in the background and the sunset is shot at the exact same location as this shot, which is like the restaurant in the bar. Right? It's crazy. And it's done in what we call the LED volume. And that is, the room is made out of LED tiles, like we make TVs, right? So this is literally, we just take, we pass it around. We take thousands and thousands of these tiles and we stack them all together. There's a 209 employee that just walked in. And we can project, we can put these images up on the wall. So we'll start showing you little by little how it all works and the parts that we're responsible for, but that's the important thing to keep in mind. And it's kind of tough to see. Do you mind to turn the lights up just for a second? Yeah. So virtual production is really, I think the best way to summarize it is a combination of digital and what we call practical or real world, right? So real stuff and fake stuff all at the same time, but you can't tell the difference when you watch it on the TV or in the big screen. So these mountains are obviously fake, right? They are in the wall, so they're built in the computer and they're on the wall. This, however, is real dirt, right? And so we get real dirt. It's crazy. Like these guys get really carried away. We get real dirt, special dirt. They take they build the floor. They scan in every bump and every hole, and they use the real color and the real texture of that dirt to match the virtual mountains that are here. And so it's literally both, right? It's fake and real. And like they said, they can switch from this to snow and icebergs in as quickly as they can put the snow in over the dirt, right? So that's how an LED volume, I mean, it's really just giant, it's an oversimplification, but tons and tons and tons of television monitors stacked together to create an image. And then we put real stuff in place to blend right in. This is a great example. So this is a practical set. This is supposed to be like one of those Star Wars bars. And you can see the LED wall is not on necessarily, it's just white. And then in the video, if you saw, like with the flick of a switch, like these guys didn't really move at all. And the background came on and suddenly it looks like they're standing in the bar itself. One of the reasons that this is so important, and we're going to talk a little bit about LED volumes versus green screen. You guys have all seen stuff where they're standing in front of the giant green wall, right? In this particular case, the Mandalorian himself, this is a stand-in, right? This is not his full costume, but his entire costume is reflective metal. And so if he was standing in front of gigantic green curtains, in order to make those green curtains work, they have to put a tremendous amount of light on. And so you would just see green reflections, and we're going to take a look at that later, all over his clothing. And that's a problem, right? Like if you're watching it later, they either have to do a tremendous amount of work in post to clean up and get rid of the green, or if they don't have the budget, you just see the green and it doesn't look right. But what makes this all possible is what we call the render engine or the game engine. And it's only in the last few years that these game engines have enabled us to do what we do. So in order to do this kind of production previously, like when you see these movies, even today, the movies are still very, very visual effects heavy. These artists go away, they build all these worlds, they render these things on render farms. You know, we used to go to the premieres of the DreamWorks films all the time, and they were always so proud of how many computers it took to render the film, how many hours. And so they would have something like 1,000 computers that would have to run continuously for like 4 months to render out a DreamWorks production. And that's how it's done even still today, and that's how it's always been done. But these game engines allow us to do all this in real time. And so I don't know how many guys play games, especially console games, but if you think about a game like Call of Duty, where you're controlling what a character sees, and you're controlling what that character does with your thumbs, you can literally, right, with just the push of a button, you can make somebody run, you can make somebody look, you can make somebody drop and roll, you can shoot at people. All that stuff has to be rendered in the game immediately. Like, you know, if you're playing a game and you push to move forward or you push to turn right and it pauses for even a second, you're like, well, that sucks. Like this, it has to be instantaneous. And these game engines are allowing this to happen at levels, quality levels that we've never seen before. And it's through those, we're literally doing all this stuff on the wall using a video game. It's truly a video game. And I'll show you another example of kind of just some background stuff. They showed this in the clip, right? So here he is with the shiny helmet and other characters. You can actually see a reflection on his bald head too. Now we've outlined here what's real, and everything behind them is the LED. And so we got not only just a reflection of light, but the ceiling is also LED panels, right? And so the ceiling will have, could be rocks like the mountains, you know, the reflections can be not just lights, but we get real reflections, real surfaces, right? And it's specifically not green. And so rather than just having big film lights, you know, you can kind of see there's different things happening in the reflections, and that's because of the game engines. And so let me show you, this is another video. This that I'm about to show you, this is running in a game engine on a PS5. This is not a supercomputer. This is nothing special. This is quite literally the PS5 that anyone can buy today.
It might be.
We just pause real quick there. So none of what this is showing here is what we call pre-rendered. None of this was recorded. This is somebody actually playing the game. So as she's moving around, you'll see shadows being cast from her body on the rocks, depending on where she goes. Those bats that just flew or the birds that fly, those will never happen the same way twice. Whatever she does, the physics and the game engine interact with that character, and the moves and the render is always different. Just the same. So 5 years ago, 10 years ago for sure, that you just saw would have taken thousands and thousands and thousands of hours on computers, rooms full of computers to make that happen. And now it's how big is a PS5? The size of a shoebox. And it does it instantly. If you went back and played that again and moved her differently, it would look just as good. So that's what's really enabling us to do what we do. One of the things that these guys love about LED volumes, specifically with render engines, is they can control the environment that you see for as long as they want. And they can, like he said, if you want to move a mountain, you can do it, right? So in traditional filmmaking, there's a thing called the golden hour. And so if you are a director and what they call the director of photography, who's in charge of the artistic look of the movie, and you want to shoot a scene outdoors in the morning with a sunrise or in the evening with a sunset, and you want to do it in Montana with the mountains or Newport Beach or whatever it is, if you think about it, they call it the golden hour. You've got about 1 hour. It's not even an hour. It's more like 40 minutes to shoot what you want with that scene, that sunset, that spot. And then the sunset's gone or the sunrise is gone. So they call it the golden hour, and it costs tons of money to get this right. So if you just use Newport Beach as an example, and you wanted a sunset shot at Newport Beach in a specific time of the year because the sun moves relative to Catalina Island and all that stuff, and you know that, these people do a tremendous amount of research. You know that Tuesday, March 2nd, the sunset's going to be exactly where you want it. You got to get a crew of 60 people there. You got to get cameras. You got to hope it doesn't rain. You got to hope there's no clouds or the clouds are the way you want them. And you got 40 minutes. And maybe the actor is being a pain in the ass, or there are clouds or wind that you didn't expect. And before you know it, the 40 minutes is gone. And everybody literally packs up, goes home, and comes back the next day, and they try it again. And then the next day and the next day. And it's really, really annoying. There's a tremendous amount of variables that are not in your control, and it costs a fortune. So this is a shot that's done in the same LED volume that you just saw all the video of. And this is the Mandalorian sitting outside at night with the sunset, and it's frozen. We can leave it like that for 4 weeks if we want. Or we could say, you know what? Maybe 5 minutes early was a little bit better. And so an artist on a computer will literally move the sun 5 minutes earlier in time, or 10 minutes later in time. Or he could say, we've got data from 7 days ago and we liked it better. And it takes about 5 minutes for that to come up. And they can leave it like that for weeks and weeks and weeks. So, I mean, it's a huge headache saver. All in all, virtual production things aren't always tremendous cost savers. There's a lot of other work that has to be done, but that's one thing that directors and DPs love about LED volumes. So we design and build these stages. We just finished building the largest one in North America up in Culver City. And it's about 8,000 square feet inside the LED volume. So it's about 90 feet across, it's about 30 feet high. And a big part of what we have to do when we build these volumes is, I don't know if you could tell when you're watching the video, I think Favreau touched on it a little bit. He said, we can shoot anywhere. The camera can move anywhere, and that's true, but there is a problem with that. So this case here, this is what the stormtrooper looks like standing in the middle of the LED volume, right? This is what you see on the screen. So when you're watching the show, this is what you see. You know, we're getting the reflections that we want. And you can see behind him is this white light. This is where the real world film camera actually is in the LED volume, right? And it looks at him and it looks past him. But because of parallax, right? Because of the difference in the distance from him to the wall and him to the camera when the camera moves. Remember, this is a real film camera. This is like a digital film camera. There's nothing fake about it because it's recording real world stuff. But as it moves, the image on the wall has to move a little bit to adjust for the distance that this thing is changing relative to the stormtrooper. If it doesn't, it'll look like he's sliding around in space and it will ruin the shot. So for a real world film camera, we have to be able to track its position, X, Y, and Z, and its rotation in this 6,000 square foot space to plus or minus 1/10 of a millimeter, right? And we do that using motion capture equipment. So we're going to talk about motion capture in a little bit, but we put really high speed digital cameras all over the ceiling. And then there's a little object that we've invented we call it the 209 camera mine. And you guys are too young to remember, but it looks like an old World War II mine that they would put in the water to blow up ships. I might have a picture of it later. We mount it here, and then we're responsible on set for tracking this camera no matter where they go and what they do with it to within 1/10 of a millimeter so that the shot works right in virtual space. So that's a big, big, big part of what we do. Camera tracking. These are the cameras I just mentioned. So these are our high-speed digital cameras. Those run at typically about 120 frames per second. And they are real digital cameras. They have lenses on them, they have digital sensors, and they can see video, but we customize them so that they only see the camera that we're looking for. And this just kind of shows where they are in the scene. Another reason, or another thing they discovered they could do inside these volumes is that looks like they built an entire spaceship inside that LED volume, right? It's not. Only this triangular piece here and this ramp are real. This is all fake. This is all in the game engine, and it's all on the ceiling and on the walls in the volume. And so it's another reason that it's really important that we track the camera, because they build what we call practical, right? So they build the real world parts. Anything he has to touch during the shot has to be real. It's really hard to fake stuff if you have to interact with it. I mean, you can do it, but it gets real expensive real fast. So if he's gonna touch it, we generally build it real. And then this is fake, and it has to match the reel in real time. So as he's moving and as the camera's moving, this whole fake piece has to move relative to the film camera to line up with the practical part of the spaceship. Oh, sure, go ahead.
Do you ever find that, like, because it's a big sheet of metal, do you ever find that the reflections cause the motion capture cameras to?
Yeah, that's a good question. When we started doing motion capture back in the days of Abe Lincoln, which is about how long I've been at it, that used to be a real problem. What we do now is we use infrared light. And so we don't see real white light. We use 850 nanometers, which is infrared. You can't see it, we can't see it, but it does prevent that from happening. But it's definitely used to always be a problem. Yep, reflections were a nightmare. Yeah.
Are there solutions for multiple cameras on set?
Yeah, why do you ask? Oh, yeah.
I mean,
There-
yeah, I imagine that gets really tricky really fast.
It's super tricky. So yes, we can do what we call multi-frustum tracking. We can track 2 cameras at once. The problem is one of them, you can't cross their views, right? That's why I was wondering why you're asking. So you know exactly what you're saying. So the reason is for you guys, if you have 2 cameras, only one can be the A camera. Only one can be the view that's going to be on the screen. Only one can be the master shot. So you can have an A camera and a B camera, and this can be looking this way doing its thing. This can be looking this way doing its thing, and you can switch between the 2. You can, just like you see in sports or TV shows, you can switch from A to B. As soon as they cross, then it becomes a problem as to which one are you seeing and when, because now they're interfering with each other. So we do it. It's another one of these things where you have to explain this to the guys all the time. Like, yeah, we can do it, but you can't cross them. They always say, oh, I swear to God, we're not going to cross them. We're not going to, I swear, we won't do it. We won't do it. And the first thing they do is cross it and go, what happened to my shot? Like, well, I tried to tell you. So yeah, great question.
Got another question.
Sure. You got to jump up and down.
How much does the budget decrease when you use this type of?
You're going to be a producer one day, right? Like I said, we really try not to use the cost savings as an argument for doing it this way. The difference is you spend roughly the same amount of money. And unfortunately, the producers don't like to hear it, but you spend it earlier in the process. And I do have a slide which will show you why that is coming up here in just a few slides. But yeah, you know, I think if you took everything into consideration, you said, look, we're not going to fly a whole crew to Antarctica. We're going to put it here. You can probably, it depends. It's all different, right? Every script is different, but we really don't pitch it to people that way to say, oh, you're going to save a ton of money if you do it. I mean, that panel that I just handed around for you guys to play with, I think those are $3,000 a piece. And so when we put 15,000 square feet of those up, it's like 20 million bucks just in that, right? So this is, oh, more, sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, now that you say that, so like, is that, do you, like, does your company just own those, or is that by the production?
Both. Yeah, so we own and we rent or we sell or yeah.
So like, for their budget, really, does that just like, is that just like an added feature for you guys to do that? Like, do they have to pay for a whole new set?
No. Works both ways. So we're building plenty of stages that are permanently installed and they just go there and shoot and pay by the day, or we're building stages for film companies that own and shoot all they want, or we travel and put them up in weird places and then they shoot for a month and take them down.
Also, I wanted to be sure. So I saw there was the speaker who's from Epic Games in there. So this is using the Unreal Engine, correct?
Yep. We work really close with Unreal, but there's Unity.
Yeah.
There's a couple small ones too. Yeah, brother.
If you were using a set, a LED volume like the size of the set on the Mandalorian, what percentage of the panels would you own?
Would we own? We don't own any of those.
You
So
don't own it.
yeah, the Lucasfilm, those are, Mandalorian's all shot right in Manhattan Beach. So there's Manhattan Beach Studios up there, and they have currently 3 stages set up. So there's Mandalorian shooting on one stage, there's Book of Boba Fett shooting on another one, and there's a new one that'll start in, I think, October, going on the 3rd one. So yeah, they own them. But we work with a lot of partners, and so it's not unusual for us to set up $20 million worth of panels.
Can you switch like how bright one panel is?
Yeah, generally you don't want that, but yeah, so they can, if you wanted to, if you looked at that panel, via software, you can control every single pixel on every single panel. Yep. Yes.
In the shot, that was a shot. Why like?
Yeah, great question. That's what we're gonna start chatting about here. So green screen is, to set it up, it's tremendously less expensive, right? Like to just hang green fabric and shoot against it is much less expensive than setting up an LED wall. And green screen, you know, it was an early technology. It's not ever going to go away. There's always an argument for green screen. And big, huge shots, like you just said, is one of the best examples for it. So we do a lot of set extensions, they call it. And so we'll go down to Atlanta and we'll take like a city block and we'll set up a green screen that's 8 stories tall and, you know, quarter-mile long, and we take that whole city block and we extend it for miles and miles and miles. But what does happen, like you see here, is everything that's green here has to be created and replaced and put in later. And so lots of things that we talked about a little bit. These guys have reflective stuff on, and it's really tough to see in this picture, but that's reflecting green on his helmet. And so in order for it to reflect white or silver or whatever the clouds are, a digital artist has to go in and literally clean up or fix every single reflection that you see in every frame of the shot, which is how they've typically done it. So that gets, in and of itself, very expensive. I mean, there's always some math in the budgeting as to how quick is the shot going to be, how well do they think you're going to see it. They're getting very worried about quality these days because we're all watching these things at home and we can hit pause and go, what's that? Like, I see a problem. You know, back when you only saw it in the movie theaters, they didn't really care as much. So the other issue is, and Favreau touched on it in the video, is, you know, these guys don't see anything. They really don't know what the environment is and what they're acting against, right? This all goes in later. I mean, they probably showed them some drawings of what it's supposed to look like. You're in Asgard, there's clouds and there's portals that are fiery, but you know, right there on the day, they really don't know. And so actors with LED get to see the real stuff and they get to interact with it. And visually, they know where to look. You know, it sounds funny, but you know, she's just staring off into space. You have really no idea where she's looking. So what they typically do is they'll try to put something up high where she needs to look. But yeah, it's a trade-off. There's always arguments for both technology, green screen sometimes and LED others, for sure. So back to your question. This is what we called a traditional production workflow. And you know, there's always the story, and then we build a bunch of practical sets. We have a live action shoot doing as much live action as we can, and it might be against a green screen. Then you get the VFX companies involved, and this is where all the money is, right? Here and here. So once you have places like Industrial Light and Magic and Pixamondo and Frame Store and all these visual effects companies, I mean, for a Marvel movie in the past, to be honest, most of them would start shooting without a script. You know, they had, you know, they really did. Especially something like the Avengers, where they have all those big name actors together in one place for only, you know, a brief period of time. They kind of wing it, and then they do what they call fix it in post, right? So they just spend a tremendous amount of money in visual effects, making the movie look good or making the movie, yeah.
What makes the visual effects
so expensive? Yeah, it's like, if you haven't, you should watch the credits for some of these movies, right? So when you see, first of all, you'll see 10 different visual effects companies listed in the end credits for every movie, and they'll have sometimes thousands of names per company. So it's tons of people, tons of time, tons of render power. Like, it's just, and again, you know, in the case of Marvel, they can't make up their mind, so they change. You know, I mean, it happens all the time. So this is kind of a traditional workflow, and like I said, they fix everything here. Like 80% of the movie's made right there. This is like our approach to virtual production, and it looks more complicated, right? But we call it fix it in pre. So we get VFX and previs and visual art department and art department. We get them involved right here at the very beginning. And then these arrows here represent, like, during this whole block of the process, all this stuff can happen and you can change it. Like we said, you can change these things in 5 minutes on the set. So you can have stunt people, you can have tech people, you can do live action, you can do LED wall, you can have green screen, you can edit, you can post, and you can continually iterate on that stuff until you're finished, until the very, very end. Nothing's really locked down. So we say fix it in pre, and what we do is we still start out, we will build characters and we'll build virtual sets in a really low res format, right? Like, we don't spend a tremendous amount of money up front getting things perfect. And as we go along the process and we see, well, it looks like this guy is gonna stay and we should finish him up. So we'll polish his character up. Looks like they're gonna stick with that environment. We'll polish that environment up. And by the time we get to here, all the assets are final, everything's done and off. And we spent more there because we had to build an LED volume, we had to build a bunch of CG stuff early, but you can change it. You can continually change it with no lockdown until it's pretty much ready to go. Make sense? So spend about the same. And producers hate this because we tell them we need more money early. They get real nervous that they're not going to get what they want by here and they're going to be out of money. So it's a tough sell. It really is sometimes. John Favreau has an easier time.
Does it make it, is it faster? Is it a faster?
Can be, yeah. So like Mandalorian, we're on season 3 now. And you know, it's a TV show, right? It's streaming. They've reduced the number of crew, they've reduced the number of days. We turn stuff around fast, they turn stuff, so it's yeah, they're in a rhythm. And then they took what they learned on Mandalorian, they applied it to Book of Boba Fett, they applied it to the new one, I can't tell you the name of. And so yeah, they're learning stuff all. Ask my daughter, she knows. Okay, so that's when we do virtual production where we have real stuff and fake stuff. So what do we do when it's all fake? And that's a good example of that is when we did Avatar. And so Avatar is not all fake, right? Avatar is, they're in the CG world and they're in the real world. But when they're in the CG world, it's all fake. And so this is what we call performance capture. And we helped James Cameron develop this process for the first movie, and we're working with them on the sequels now too. So just to give you an idea of how this works, when everything's fake.
Okay, I'm ready, and action. The thing that people need to keep very strongly in mind is that this is not an animated film. These actors did not just stand at a lectern and do a voice part, and then animators went off for the next 2 years and created the entire physicality of the performance. The most exciting thing is, it is my performance. This thing walks and talks and acts like me. It's my interpretation. Every nuance, every tiny bit of the performance that you see on the screen was created by the actors. They had to run, they had to leap, they had to fight, they had to do all the things that you see them doing in the film. And that's where the power of the performance comes from.
It's not just we'll capture emotion, we're trying to capture what's the intent of the actor.
Go! What CGI technology does is it replaces prosthetics. Actors can now play any character that's designed in the computer without going through hours and hours of makeup. And what we get is their performance coming through the CGI character.
Performance captures a technique where you try to capture the performance of an actor and translate it to a digital character.
Prior to them even moving out into the performance capture world, we with the actors inside this giant sphere covered with lights, and we could photograph them, study their facial features, and try to understand how to design their characters.
This is great. And then you put an actor in a suit with markers on the suit and put you in a spatial line using a lot of cameras all around to record the motions of all the markers. The computer is creating a real-time moving skeleton of you. From that skeleton, you now can drive a computer-generated character.
The intent is to capture the entire performance of the talent. We're recording tons of high definition reference from all these different angles so that we can really get those subtle nuances.
The part that we had to create during the making of this film was the facial image-based performance capture technology that allowed what the actors did to 100% translate to what you see the characters doing. So we came up with this idea that we would actually have a little boom, and on the end of that boom, there'd be a little tiny camera, and it would image the face while the actor was working. What we're trying to do is take what the actor is doing emotionally in any given scene and to translate that into the characters. And we do that by using their muscles. It gives us a way to correspond emotion to what you actually see expressed in the character's face. It was a very, very exciting time where we realized that we had rounded that corner and that we had true human emotion captured and performed by a non-human character.
But they sent me here to learn your ways.
Very same thing. You knew this would happen.
Yes. Basically, you got 190 infrared cameras looking down on you. There's nowhere to hide, so every take you have to be truthful.
I think people expected the actors to find it more difficult, but Roy's doing make-believe anyway, so pretending that nothing is everything is second nature to us.
Run, don't run.
Definitely run!
Takes you back to the old theater days where you may just have one chair in the middle of your little black box theater and you have to imagine everything that's going on around it.
You've got to just let go of all of the things that you thought was supposed to happen and just do it. Let your imagination run.
You get so deep into this world that you start hearing, seeing, feeling Pandora. That happened from day one that I walked on the set. I had to take everything I learned in training and apply it to my first day.
It helps you detach from the fact that you're shooting a movie. You're able to really dig into your character.
It's not animation. It's capturing the avatar version of the world.
Even though I'm big guy for Toy Blue, it's got my personality, it's got my soul. That's quite spectacular that a computer-generated image can do that. That really surprised me.
The door has just barely been opened on what's possible with this.
One of the things that I'm always going to take with me is the fact that I was a part of a revolutionary experience in Hollywood.
So that was a long time ago. But that's how we do it. And I want, as artists in this room, when James Cameron said that this is not an animated movie, that there wasn't thousands of animators fixing the stuff after this, he's lying to you. Look at the credits of Avatar. There's never been more digital artists on a movie than on this. This is fantastic technology, but it looks horrible until artists get their hands on the data. It looks clunky. The faces don't even look like faces, really. I mean, it's a reference is what we get for the face. So he really ticked off a lot of people when he said that. And he said it over, and he said it at the Oscars. It's just not true. Everything we do is a tool. Everything that we do is a tool to allow artists to do more with less time. You know, when you watch those characters in Pandora walk, for instance, the one I always like to tell artists is, so we saw them walk and run and swing, like every step, every move, everything they do has to be drawn. I mean, it has to. And so as a digital artist, do you really want to animate somebody walking in a straight line for hours and hours and hours in a day? No. So what we do is we capture the actor doing whatever it is you want them to do, and then artists come in and look at it and go, yeah, I know that's what he did, but I'm gonna kind of punch it up. Put a little more bounce in his step, or a little more swing in his arm, or a little more attitude in his head movement, and it's night and day difference. So he's lying when he says it's not an animation. It's absolutely. So why do we use famous people to do motion capture? I mean, like I just said, they walked and ran and swung around. And why don't we use stunt people, or why don't we use actors that aren't as expensive? There's a lot of reasons, but the reason we have Shaquille O'Neal here is because when we do, not anymore, but when we used to do Shaq's video games, you really need the signature movement of Shaquille O'Neal. Like you could probably find another 7-foot dude who could shoot a basketball, but he's not going to run and jump and shoot and act and dance like Shaq. So the reason that they use famous people or real athletes, and look, we use stunt people in mocap all the time. Like we don't want to hurt somebody who doesn't know how to perform a stunt. So we'll use, all those people on Avatar did as much as they could. And then when we were getting into the dangerous stuff, you swap them out for a stunt person. But signature movement, like we talked about the camera, when we're tracking that camera to plus or minus 1/10 of a millimeter, every one of these dots on their suits is a point that we're tracking to know where and how they moved. And we track every one of those dots to within 1/10 of a millimeter in the same space. We use it a tremendous amount for sports analysis, right? And so we will marker up an athlete, and especially if they've been injured. And so what the pros do is as soon as you get drafted by an NFL team, they put you in a mocap suit and they run you through all these activities, and we record your data. We record all of it. Then if you should become injured, when they think you're ready to play again, they go through it again. And you put the suit back on and you perform all the same activities, and they compare side by side. How you doing now versus pre-injury? And if they're not up to where they were, then they don't play just yet. More rehab, right? They do it a lot on before draft day. It's a really great tool for analyzing human performance. And so motion capture gets used for a tremendous amount of stuff. Video games is a big one. We get to do, any video game that's got any sort of person or creature or something that walks or crawls or runs, we've done. We were at Overwatch. We got to attend a couple of years ago these esports events, which are just insane, like absolutely insane. And just to give you an idea how mocap's used in game making, very similar to movies, but I think most everybody knows Call of Duty.
And the world stays clean. That's the mission.
You can't know unless you fought Arsenal for that one in some shit on full of straps.
For modern warfare, expectations are so high that coming in and reimagining it from the top to the bottom is humbling to say the least. I'm Taylor Kurosaki, the studio narrative director at Infinity Ward. Now it's my job to make sure this game is everything the fans expect and hopefully a lot more. Today, I have an opportunity to sit down and chat with someone who has a similar challenge and responsibility, and that is Barry Sloan, the guy that's bringing to life one of the most beloved characters in the Call of Duty series. Thanks for being here.
Of course, mate. It's a pleasure.
What was it like for you to be put into this role, and how does that relate to your experiences of playing Call of Duty in the past?
I was very drawn from Call of Duty 4, the first one, Moonfall that came out. I had that as part of my upbringing, my childhood, and then to become him has been just an incredible experience.
I knew that if we found a guy who could exude what I think we all have in our collective memory of a guy that is Price, the ceiling would be way higher. And I think that's what we got with you.
And obviously I wasn't aware because they weren't saying it was Captain Price. They were just saying the name on the audition, but it was
Commander Sykes.
Yeah.
I knew in that moment, I felt like, okay, this is the guy. This is our Price. I wanted to be able to drop your voice into a real thing that we were working on.
Okay.
And so I couldn't have you say, under my command, Commander Sykes.
Yeah, exactly.
So I crossed out Commander Sykes. And I probably shouldn't have done this. It's probably a total breach of protocol or whatever. But I just wanted to hear your voice saying those words.
Yeah.
So I crossed it out and I wrote under my command, Captain John Price.
Yeah. And I do remember saying, that's a name drop. That second, I was like, okay, here we go. Under my command, Captain John Price. You have full executive authority. One of the most exciting things for me is the collaborative nature of what it takes to make this.
Yeah.
And how many people are responsible for the performance. And I remember speaking to Mitch, who's our technical advisor I'd worked with before, and he said, you know, no one man can play Price, it takes an army. And it's very much that. It has been from day one. You know, I'm the first guy to ever get to physically move him. So I had to find a way to make this guy real and believable, and a guy who can work in a 2019 scenario. Above all else, he's a protector. He's a guy. But I wanted to make sure that in every scene I'm checking in on the person that I'm with. But I tried to make this Price be someone he could aspire to be. That's not over here. Trust me. For you, I mean, you've got not just one character's work to worry about. You have the entire franchise on your shoulders. How did you feel about having to take that on?
Our goal was to make a game that gave all those feelings that we've had playing the original series, because we have to not just exceed the expectations of what was.
So we don't need to go over everything you do in Call of Duty. But what I will say about the games is a game like Call of Duty, you know, they're getting better and better and better with their credibility, but games don't get the recognition that they deserve. I mean, if you take total play time from start to finish for a Call of Duty title, it's hours and hours and hours. And they sell billions and billions of dollars for every title. You know, a movie today costs $150 million to make, and if it makes $250 million at the box office, they consider it a huge success. You know, it will happen, and I don't know exactly when, but when Grand Theft Auto 6 goes on pre-sale, it'll make $1 billion in the first hour. I mean, it's working on it for years, but $1 billion in the first hour before it even releases. And there's so much. I mean, I really don't have any idea how those guys keep track of the storyline and the script when it's up to the player to navigate through these games. So games, and we are starting, like I said, the game engine is the only reason we can do the virtual production stuff that we do, but games and film are starting to do this. And so you see films come out and a game of the same title, and pretty soon, I think that there's going to be no difference between the game and the film. I think it's just going to be one thing. They've been talking about it for a long, long time. So these are some of our customers that are kind of recognizable names. You know, we do a ton of work with Netflix, a lot of work with Marvel. Gosh, Netflix, all these streaming services. Right now that there's Apple Plus and Disney Plus and Amazon Prime, we're working with all those guys to just make a tremendous amount of content. Every game company, every big studio, these are the guys that we work with. And then a couple of just kind of fun shots. I won an Emmy for a TV show that I worked on some time ago. I won an Oscar for some of the stuff we did on Polar Express. And then this bald guy works at 209 Group. And this bald guy is our buddy Tim, who directed Deadpool. And so Tim let Greg do the facial motion capture for Colossus for Deadpool 1. And so, you know, it's fun. It's a lot of fun what we do. A lot of work, but it beats digging ditches for a living. So in a nutshell, oh, and I wanted to mention too, so when you see all the motion capture stuff, right, the suits and the markers, the black suits with the white markers, that's us. That's Mocap Solutions. So we make all of those. And we've developed some really proprietary products for motion capture over the years. That's our oldest company. That one's been around about 15 years. And we just keep doing more. Like I think we're going to retire off of motion capture and virtual production for sure. So any more questions? Come on, producer, you got some more budget questions for me.
Well, so I was thinking, like, so if you have so many projects and everything, how do you like choose which one's priority and which ones?
They choose for us.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so does it depend on like how much time and money and like all that? So there's a lot of factors.
Yeah, there's 12 people at 209 Group now. And so we have a whole, what we call the bench. We have a whole bench full of people that we hire when we need them. And we have a lot of partner companies. Like if you look back here at the previous slide, you know, these are, not only are these companies that hire us, but these are companies that we'll hire when we need help. So yeah, we do a lot of it, but we have to bring a tremendous number of people. Like pretty soon we'll be doing probably the 3 Star Wars shows will all be overlapping at some point. And so we'll have 3 different crews that might have these different stuff. Yep.
how many projects do you think that you're working on?
I should be able to tell you that off the top of my head. It's really crazy. What happened, Netflix just canceled 2 of them. So we had 2 feature films lined up for Netflix, which were gonna keep us really busy for a long time. They canceled. So it's always 3 or 4 at a time. Yeah.
For a lot of the projects that you do, you have to sign like a
I should pull it up, but I just graduated from security school with Disney this week because of the Star Wars work, because we get assets, digital assets, way in advance. They came and inspected our facility. We all had to go through serious training. It's no joke. And it happens. We were shooting a project in Culver City on the LED stage I was mentioning earlier. Somebody posted footage. The first day of the shoot, they put footage up on social media.
So I noticed that you have
Mhm.
and I want to push out.
Yep.
I've seen
Yeah.
because the shows have it.
Well, yeah. Well, there's a the original crew. Is that? Yeah.
So how many, like, what's the most amount of work would you like had to work with like that?
Well, it's hundreds. Yeah, like a feature film, and that's why I'm joking about the feature. There's nothing better than feature. Not only are there a million pieces, but because of these crazy directors and artists, to be honest, stuff changes. So we might think we're shooting Tuesday and then Monday night, like 2 in the morning, supposed to look like 2 in the morning. It's just a film.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, and then Hollywood stuff is always 12-hour days. They try to keep it that always.
What would you say is your favorite project?
There's been so many great ones. You know, Avatar early, we knew about Avatar maybe a year before they even started. We knew that James Cameron hadn't done that it was going to be the biggest thing. So we spent literally months prepping just for the demo to try to convince him to hire us to do it. So I gotta say that was a long time ago. And now we're working on the sequels with him. That one sticks with me for sure for that reason. But we just, and we're right. Like it came out. Yes. Totally by accident. So I grew up in Detroit and I went to school, which was my dream. I wanted to design cars. So I was designing cars in Detroit, and I was also racing sailboats. And I had a real racing sailboats in Detroit. It's pretty cool. So you can only race sailboats for like 6 months a year. So I quit my job and sold my house and moved here so I could race sailboats 12 months a year. But I still was doing the same thing. I'm still kind of working as an engineer. And then this was pre-Google, guys. This was like, there was no Google. Yahoo was the coolest website back then. And I found a job opening on website called monster.com for, it was from a company called Vicon Motion Systems. I ignored it forever because I thought it meant like conveyor belts or elevators or something. Vicon Motion Systems. So it turns out it was one of the first motion capture camera companies. They were based in the UK and they were opening an office here in Southern California. So I didn't know anything about motion capture, I didn't know anything about Hollywood, I didn't know anything about film industries. And there was, like I said, there was no Google back then. You couldn't just get online and start looking all this stuff up. So I went to the bookstore of all places and I bought magazines about animation and started just trying to learn some words to drop in. I got hired for a couple of reasons. They were looking looking for people that have technical degrees, which I did, people that had familiarity with 3D software. And I was a CAD guy, so I had that. And then believe it or not, the CEO of the company was from Chicago. So he wanted to hire a Midwest guy, and I was from Detroit. So that yeah, it was a sailing addiction that kind of got me into the way it really worked out. But I really want to say, the engineering degree to this day gives me a tremendous advantage in doing what we do. We have, like, our CTO that I showed you, Greg, you know, he is the top technical person in our entire company. He was a music person, you know, I mean, he's totally self-taught. So like, I guess I want to make it clear, you don't have to figure it all out right now, right? Find something you want to do and do it. It might lead you somewhere else, which in all of our cases have had. Yes.
So now that this is like much more popular and everything, are there more like people who are trying to hire like kids out of high school so that they can like, okay, so it's kind of like an easier way to like work people into the company and everything? Is that?
Well, when we talk about using the Unreal Engine, right? You cannot find enough artists that know how to do it. We're training them all the time. We're talking to school all the time. There's not enough. There's just not enough. And they work from home because you can do all of it remote.
For a lot of like machine robots or black is a lot more like machines.
We can do both. Yeah. So you know, robots are programmable. So you can make a robot move however you like. And you don't really require a motion capture to do that. But we also reverse engineer it. So I worked on Terminator 3 with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And we would record the way Arnold moved in mocap and then make the robot move like him. So we could take that data right out of the mocap system and put it into the robot software and literally just within minutes make the robot move just like Arnold.
Which company do you like working with?
You would think it would be Marvel, right? I mean, they have all the cool stuff, but they're very schizophrenic. Yeah, they are great. Honestly, Netflix is amazing. The games guys are actually usually the best. Netflix is we're doing a lot more with Apple now that they have streaming. I would say today though, we probably have the closest relationship with Amazon Studios. So they're kind of one of the newest ones in the game, but they are expanding rapidly. And these guys, Rockstar, are, I mean, you know, Grand Theft Auto games and Red Dead Redemption was fun.
Have you ever worked on any of Capcom's Monster?
Capcom is a Japanese company, and they do a lot of work over there. I've been over there to visit Capcom and done some work over there, but not that. Yeah.
Okay, so what's like the craziest last meeting you had to go to that was like furthest away or something?
Oh,
like,
furthest away?
Yeah. Like that was super
Yeah, I've
last
been to
minute.
China, been to Japan, you know, all these things. Yeah, China was a last minute one. And China, they wanted me to do, I literally had to go present, this is actually bad. I had to go pitch to a room of probably twice as many people as are here. And they were all investors in this film. And it was all in Chinese. Of course, I didn't speak Chinese, so I had an interpreter who thought it was hilarious to just call me Tom and Jerry every time I said something. And they were laughing, and I had no idea why. I found out later he just kept referencing Tom and Jerry cartoons. Yeah.
Working with various athletes, does it really affect like your suits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you pinpoint different locations?
Totally. Yep.
And do you have one that's like, let's say their whole body? Or just
Yeah, so the suits, we developed the material ourselves. It took us about a year to develop a material that Velcro, the little markers are just rubber Velcro dots with reflective tape on it. So the suits, Velcro has to stick to it, and it has to be comfortable, and it has to stretch for performance. You do not want the suit to hinder their performance. So yeah, in the case of an athlete, whoever's analyzing the data, whichever biomechanist or physical therapist wants to see the data, they tell us where they want the markers. We always put them on the joints, no matter what. Like you want to put it right where the elbow bends, right where the shoulder moves, right? Where the knee moves, and then after, it's just, actually, it's the same with entertainment. The VFX guys all want everything a little bit different. So the suits are made so that the markers can go anywhere on. But yeah, great question.
Is there an element of like nostalgia for you, like growing up, like Star Wars,
Oh.
was, like the biggest thing ever? And I know, like talking to my dad and going to that movie theater for the first time of like,
Yeah.
this is the coolest thing to ever happen in movies.
Yep.
And now you get to work on that. So how do you deal with that? Like, I mean, it's kind of like starstruck.
I cried a lot.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I saw Star Wars for my 7th birthday. I remember it, and I have been associated with Industrial Light and Magic for years. So I've gotten to be great friends. Like everyone you saw in that video are friends. And so I've toured places inside of Industrial Light and Magic that you'll never see. I mean, I've seen the real Darth Vader costume. I've seen the real Han Solo in Carbonite. I've seen all the Stormtroopers. I mean, I've seen all of it. And but what's crazy to me, which I think is just silly, is nothing's bigger than Baby Yoda. I mean, right?
So how do you counterbalance that? Because like for a lot of our students, it seems almost intimidating to like want to get involved in that. And so how do you counterbalance that?
I mean, it's always a job, right? You know, most everybody in the industry is really crazy, right? So, you know, if you run into a movie star out on the street, it's just, I feel for them, right? I wouldn't want to be famous. I don't care how much you pay me. Once you get behind the firewall of a studio and you're on set with them, I mean, I haven't had a bad experience with anybody. Everyone's just very, very cool. Usually it's, you know what, if someone's going to act poorly, it's usually like some peon who's probably not going to be there tomorrow anyway. But yeah, you know, when we get scripts and things, and when we learned, we were in negotiations for Mandalorian for months before we knew it was Mandalorian. And when we found out it was Mandalorian, yeah, we did a happy dance for sure. But it's very busy. Yes.
How many times do you have to travel out of state for like either problems or like producing? And how many times does that happen, like out of pocket pay or like business pay?
Yeah, well, thankfully we're spread out now. So we have an office in Atlanta. We have offices on the East Coast when we need to have people there. So I don't have to, I mean, it was just me for years and years and years. And that happened a lot. Couple things, you know, one, we do a really good job of trying to really bulletproof everything we do and then having backup plans for when things may go wrong, but it happens. And nobody accepts like, I'll be there in 3 days. Yeah, you're right. You got to get there. And then, yeah, it's out of our pocket. We don't get to add that to the budget.
You said that you have like backup plans, for example, in case if you only have like one person who can really work on something, like what specific thing do you have with other people who can work on it or have like?
We try to, yeah. So the way we typically operate is we'll have our virtual production supervisor is in charge. And he architects everything and understands how everything works. But when you're shooting on the day, right? And so on the day that you're shooting, he's not actually touching or doing anything, right? He's supervising. And the crew each has their own very specific job. And so if one of them's sick or one of them gets injured, the VP soup can step in for any of the jobs.
Say like the supervisor's not there, but like all the other people are there.
Oh yeah, we would never do that. Yeah, we would never do. I mean, it really, unless, so we have A-roll days where it's like first unit, they call it. And that's big stars, big directors, big crew. Then you have B-roll days or second unit or third unit. And so as they go through second unit and third unit, the movie stars aren't there anymore. The directors, you know, they're doing like footage of skylines and things like that. So you can start to scale down on that. But no, when it's first unit stuff, it's all hands on.
So I'm curious about like the whole idea of combining the real camera with the Unreal. So is the Unreal being put into like the display of like what the camera's capturing, or is it more into like directly the camera itself?
Yeah, everything comes through the digital camera, and then so Unreal is taking care of the wall, so it's generating the content. Then we shoot it like it's real life, right? The film camera doesn't know that it's not a painted wall, and it doesn't know it's an LED wall. So it's what we call in-camera VFX, and it's live. It used to be called live to tape, but yeah, it's Unreal Engine provides the imagery, and then we shoot it and record it like it's real world stuff. Yes. Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, when you do shoot it in like the large rooms and stuff, since it's rounded, do you have to change perspective? Like, does it look distorted when you're up close?
That's exactly why we track the camera. When you're up close, so if you walk up to it and look at it, not really. I mean, it's just like if you walk up to this screen, that looks very in focus to you. That looks kind of blurry to me, right? So the film camera is never, ever, ever focused on the wall. It's usually focused about 5 feet in front. So if you looked at everything I showed you, the background images are just a little bit blurry for that very reason. But you can zoom in and out.
Working with all these sort of animation and very much like acting focused companies, do you ever get like proposals yourself for an acting role or like?
They promised me a role in Terminator 3 if I would provide a discounted rate, which I did, and I never even got to the award. Yeah, they swore up and down, and it never happened. Yeah.
Having developed these 3 companies, what are you most proud of?
I guess the fact that we're still in business. I mean, mocap solutions I developed while I was working for that Vicon company. I mean, the story was Vicon was making these cameras that were like $25,000 a piece, and we would sell 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 of them at once. And so it was millions of dollars. And the things that they were putting on the suit, the markers that they were buying were really terrible. I mean, they just looked rotten. And I told them, you know, we're selling hundreds of thousands of dollars of stuff, and then we give them this bag of crap. And everything that they do depends on the accuracy of these things. I said, I can do a better job. And they said, you know, as long as you can do a better job for less money and not affect your day job, then we'll take a look. So that's how we started it. Yeah, Paula, who just took off, we sat down, I don't know, 5 years ago, and we were like, do we really think we can make it to retirement on this stuff? You know, like people have been trying to develop what they call markerless motion capture for years, because the suit is, you know, if you could just track the actor wearing a costume, it would be much better. They're still trying, but it's a very difficult problem. And so mocaps what got us started, and then we've just been gradually getting into the bigger picture of virtual production. So yeah, I think like 209 Group's 12 years old, mocap's 15 years old, Novation's only a couple years old, but yeah, I think probably the fact that we're still in business and growing, like the companies get bigger every year, it's pretty crazy.
Are you the only people who do motion capture
No,
stuff?
no, we're not even the only people that make the suits and the markers, but we're the company that makes the most of them. Now, there's several companies that make the motion capture systems, and there's different versions. What we do is called passive optical. So the cameras shine a light, it reflects off the marker, goes back to the camera. There are companies that put real actual lights on people. There are companies that put magnets on people. There's all sorts of different ways to do mocap, but I would say we're probably the biggest. We're the biggest that doesn't make the cameras.
So you were talking about the suits without the markers on them, correct? So how many years would you like predict or estimate like when that would start like falling into play?
I really thought it'd be by now. Even when I was working at Vicon, they had an R&D project to try to do it. The problem is that, like I said, what we can do with the markers and the cameras, we can do it so hyper accurately that they can do it without them. But where we're plus or minus a tenth of a millimeter, they're like plus or minus an inch, right? And if it's not accurate, it's just not as good. And so there's a long way to go before the accuracy gets. I don't even know how they do it. There's a lot of assumptions that they.
So does that go more into like the idea of like physics and math in that sense versus like the whole engineering and like side of it?
Yeah, the way the markerless works is a single camera is looking at you, trying to figure out what's a leg, what's an arm, what's a foot, what's a hand. And if I stand like this, it's very easy. But as soon as I go like this, it's very difficult. With markers, we could do this all day long. It used to be a problem, but for markerless video-based, they call this is really tough. You know, if anytime I see a markerless motion capture demo, they're always like, "Hey, look at me dancing." You're like, "Yeah, well, how about you roll on the floor and see what happens?" Because it falls apart. It'll happen. The compute power is probably one of the biggest, and you know, artificial intelligence trains like, yeah, it'll happen. I don't know. I hope not for a while.
Yeah.
That's why I retire. Yeah, man.
For like athletic games, stuff like that, and like they have to be in the suit and like all the facial features and stuff.
How long would you say a single athlete's in that suit?
They're usually contractually limited. Shaq was the best example we've ever had. We had Shaq for exactly 1 day. And that included him shooting the cover art for the game as well. And so we suited him up. This is even better. Let me back up. So he came with a whole entourage full of people that we had to pay. We had to pay his hairdresser $40,000 to be there for a day. And wait, Shaq's bowl.
She's got a great game.
Yeah. Yep. And so Shaq had $1 million. He had $1 million to be there for a day. And all he did was piss and moan the entire time. So a day. And then we get some signature moves from Shaq, like I said. We get a dunk, we get as much as we can. And then we got to use somebody else for the months and months and months that it takes. Yeah, they're athletes and actors, it's always determined, and they keep you to like the minute. You have, and the poor guy was like, Shaq was a problem because the director of the game was like this brand new guy. He was young, he was just trying to be real respectful, but we just couldn't get Shaq to do anything. It's really bad. That's not usually the case though. They're usually, actually, what's really funny now is now, right? Like, you're in the game, right? Like that's the thing, you're in the game. So now you get an athlete, as soon as they're drafted or become a pro, they start wondering, when are we going to get mocap? When do I get in the game? So now the young guys kind of want to do it, but it gets monotonous. It's NBA 2K is probably the best one. There's so many guys in NBA, and 2K games just keeps upping and upping and upping. Like they have a career, or no, it's pretty good. But yeah, we don't get them for very much. Yeah.
Do you think you work more in games, TV shows, or
Games, probably we do more work in games because so there's 3 teams that make Call of Duty games, right? So every team is constantly working on one. There's lots of game crews. So yeah, I mean, if you talk about days or hours or months work, way more games. Yep. But I would say it's probably half the revenue. So films, we make a lot more money. So it's kind of 50-50 on the revenue. Braden, you don't have a question? You know all this, right? Sorry, Braden works for us. And his sister goes here. Yeah.
What are some of the Marvel projects that you guys?
We do all of the superhero stuff. Avengers. Yeah. So Marvel. I mean, we go way back to like when Edward Norton played the Hulk and that kind of stuff. So yeah. If you guys start watching the behind the scenes stuff, you'll see vocab everywhere. Yes, Ella.
have you met Stan Lee?
I have met. Does anyone know who Stan Lee is? Yeah. So I did about a year-long project with Stan Lee. So that one, going back to your point. So I would say that prior to meeting Stan Lee, which I knew was going to happen, I knew when it was going to happen, I knew I was going to get the opportunity to work with him. I had never really been nervous about meeting anybody. I did not sleep the night before I met Stan Lee. And then he was coming to do a tour to check out the technology to see if it was going to work. And I couldn't even function until I figured out that I just had to carry a cup of coffee around. I had to have something in my hand when I was talking. I have a picture of it somewhere I could dig up, but yeah, that one, that's the only time. That was the only time. And he was so cool. He was so cool.
What was your most recent project?
We can't tell you about the most recent ones.
But
No Way Home. Yep. So we did a lot of Spider-Man stuff recently. Yes.
On Netflix, what projects have you guys been doing?
Oh, Netflix?
Yeah,
There's a lot going on with Netflix right now. Moonfall was supposed to be a Netflix show, and it ended up being a theatrical release. It's out now. We were involved with Moonfall when it was a completely different script. I don't even know if it's doing that well at the box office right now. Yeah, it's funny because there's just so many things that we're working on right now that we can't talk about. Yeah, Netflix has got a lot of good stuff. Apple's got a lot of good stuff coming. And anyone watch Yo Gabba Gabba as a kid?
Yes.
So we're bringing that back.
No way.
On an LED one. Yeah. I can only say it because there was a press release put out. So the original creators Well, we're doing it against an LED volume. Yep, the old game again, coming back.
Were there ever times when you're at an accidentally like spilled, sort of like leaks or like accidentally broke a non-slipper?
Probably. But you really do know that you can't say something, oh, I was just with Tom Holland yesterday. Like, you know, like, what we typically do is say, I was in London shooting a project for a movie that you probably know about, but I can't tell you about it. And they go, oh, so you were working on Batman. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it the old live action or is it?
No, this will be all CG. Yeah. So it'll be like the original, but that's about all I can say. For Avatar, yeah. So it's the original creators.
Which project did like the best in box office?
Well, Avatar for sure.
Yeah, or more recent.
You know what's so funny is I used to keep track, and now I don't. It's up to them whether they make money or not. I don't. I mean, we did.
Do you benefit if they do better?
No, we don't get. It's funny because that's another one, right? Like they try to negotiate with you, like, well, we'll give you points on the back end. You think there's a thing called Hollywood accounting where they always lose money, right? No matter what, they lose money. If you get back end points, you get, unless you're Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Or even though we won an Oscar and an Emmy, a couple Oscars, you know, I think I've only gotten on-screen credit once or twice, and because they want money. Like for them to put our name on the credits, they're like, well, if you cut your bid in half, then we'll put your name on it. Like, we can't spend movie credits. We can buy cars with the stuff you're paying us. So we typically, in fact, I got a call when we shot. We just wrapped on the production team called me and said, hey, how do you want your title listed in the film? I said, well, I didn't work on any of it. Like all of our crew did. I didn't do anything. They go, I know, but we were going to add you. No, I didn't. Yeah.
Okay. Which project have you like hated?
Let me look at this group of, you know, the one that really put us through the ringer. And we haven't done work with them in a long time because they kind of revamped, but DreamWorks. Yeah. Ella used to go to all the premieres for all the DreamWorks movies, and man, they would work us. I'm not exactly going to say they would work us 20 times harder than anybody else.
Have there been like moments where you knew that there was only one way that this would happen, like almost like a miracle for you, like where, I mean, doing this work is phenomenal. It's really exciting. Obviously, we're all here because we're compelled to learn more about it. We feel like we're on the edge of something even greater as it builds. But getting to this,
yeah,
when you get to this,
no,
you have to know.
Yeah, totally blessed for sure. I mean, we have pivoted not so many times. Braden's been around for a couple of years and he's seen some of it. So for sure, when the pandemic hit, everything shut down. Movie making, everything shut down. And so we stepped back and really evaluated how we were doing business. Thankfully, we had kind of a spontaneous meeting with the executives at Epic Games or Unreal Engine. And they asked if we would be willing to step up the lock. And without even thinking, we said yes. And then we hung up, we're like, I don't know how the heck we're going to do this, right? During the pandemic. And we really did change the whole business model. It's not worth going into the boring details, but yeah, without a doubt. And that was, you know, I couldn't have prayed for that one. Like to have the executives of one of the biggest companies in the entire planet call you and ask if you'd like to be a partner and change your business and work more closely with them. Like, what do you say? You do it. Yeah.
So sometimes that risk taking.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. But you know, it's funny because, you know, my team gets really not upset, but I'll say yes to a lot of stuff because I know enough about, I don't know necessarily everything, but I know enough about it to say, yeah, there's a risk, but I know we can do it. You know what I mean? Yeah, calculated risk. Yeah. Like I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I know enough to know it's not impossible.
With the risk of COVID during the pandemic, how did you do vocab stuff with masks?
Yeah, we did no face capture stuff. It's really, it's going to sound bad to say, but for our industry and what we do, the lockdowns were a blessing because film sets require dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of people. An LED volume, we were able to do an entire LED stage with 15 people. And we would put 5 of them in a trailer outside, socially distanced at their computers, 5 in another trailer, social. And so we started making everything on LED walls because we could get rid of, we could either not get rid of, but we could disperse the crew remotely and literally only have 10 people in that giant stage.
So for a lot of your projects during that time, was it just like a lot of distance? Like say for example, like you did like something that was revolved around fighting, there was no like sort of hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah, but they were super careful. We were testing every day, you know, we would, when we were doing films during the pandemic, during the lockdown, we were in bubbles. And so if you were, like I said, there was kind of first unit and second unit. And so when you would go work, we would go to Atlanta, work on a film, and you would be in bubble A, which meant that you tested with bubble A, and then bubble A people all stayed in the same hotel, all ate the same food, all stayed, and bubble B never never crossed paths with bubble A.
So that way you knew like
everyone was testing, right? Yeah, everyone was testing and sequestered. Like you weren't seeing your family, you weren't seeing anybody else. You were locked down. We moved as a group, and we would switch back.
So that allowed for hand-to-hand combat back.
You know, I don't know that we did. I mean, if we had to, we had to. I think we tried to minimize that. What we were doing was we were sending actors mocap suits and letting them do mocap at home.
Wow.
So directly by Zoom. Yeah, a lot of that. There's the name of it escapes me, but Braun Digital Studios did an entire feature film by everyone doing their own mocap at their house.
So you can do it if you have a suit.
Yeah.
And there enough of a quality camera to capture.
Well, there's different suits. So this wouldn't be ours. These are different suits that allow you to do it without all. They're not as accurate, but again, you know, they were kind of going for a lower budget approach, but they did it. Yeah, it was crazy. Yes. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so the Epic Games makes the Unreal Engine, and we've been working with them directly for about 22 years. So we saw it in the very beginning, and we've seen it change over the years. Look, without a doubt, computers get faster every year, right? Faster and faster and more powerful. The game engines use what's called a GPU, so a graphical processing unit instead of a CPU, and those things are just going. So the amount of power that is in a computer today at the price is a big part. But yeah, they continue to just refine their algorithms, and I mean it's crazy. It's no small task. I don't even know how many employees they have writing code for that, but it's crazy.
Our honors programming class is working on Unreal.
Yeah, that's the best, man. You will never not have a job. Yeah.
So I see you worked with Apple. Did you work with like Face IDs and all that? Or is that
No,
different?
yeah, no.
Did you do like emoticon or like any of that?
No,
stuff?
Apple's got their streaming service, so they have their own studio, and they're making all their own TV shows and feature film. Yeah, so I did actually. I didn't realize it at first. We were in Apple for a test, and it was for Face ID, but there was no way. We didn't know what it was for. So the solution that we brought would never have been. So in fact, the Apple Face ID technology was bought. It was owned by my buddy's company. They bought his company to put it in the phone. He doesn't work anymore. Yeah, he doesn't work.
So if some of you guys have some more questions, you are more than welcome to stay behind and ask more questions, but I know quite a lot of you
Free
guys
questions are over.
have
No more free.
have parents coming to pick you up. So can we give a round of applause and thank you so much. You're welcome to stay. Please make sure you pick up any of your trash on the way out, and thank you for coming.
What do you think? Yeah. Thanks for the question.
She's one of my
Yeah.
programmers.
Yeah. Well,